Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Suspects and Spirits, and I'm your host, Taylor Seraphin. I hope that you're all doing well today or tonight or whenever it is for you. I'm really well. I'm really damn good because it is super rainy outside. There's all kinds of loud thunder and lightning. It's a whole vibe. I love it. Love it so much. Our dog does not love it as much as I do. But she's fine. She's in my daughter's room, all curled up on a little blankie, like a little baby. She's so sweet. I love her. I'm obsessed with my dog, you guys. I would die for her. Like, obviously, for my children too. I love them with my whole heart. Different kind of love, you know? But that dog, man, gosh, she's a menace. She is a menace to society and to herself, but she is so freaking sweet. Not a single brain cell, but she's a good girl. Well, I take that back. She's a good girl sometimes. She's actually really naughty. She is a velociraptor trapped in a pit bull's body, I think. Like she can be really, really sweet. She is a sweetheart, but she eats everything. Like she never grew out of it. She still just chews everything, and she's very sneaky. Like, she'll try and counter surf, and she'll steal stuff, and I don't know why. She acts like she doesn't get fed. Like, we don't feed her all day long or give her treats all day. She's so spoiled, but she's a good girl. Um, anyways, she is not enjoying the rain as much as I am. My daughter was a little bit scared too because the thunder was loud. It was so loud earlier. The lightning was really, really bright and beautiful. But, kids don't like that stuff. Me, however, I would fall asleep to the sound of rain and thunder every single night. That's just what I would do. I have done that actually. I have used that setting on the sleep machine, on the sound machine. So, anywho, I don't have a whole lot to share with you guys today, but I did watch Weapons. This was a little while ago. I forgot to share this with you guys because I had other good news like My Chemical Romance tickets, Haley Williams tickets, all of that. But I finally watched it. My husband and I watched it together. And when I tell you that is the best like horror thriller type movie I've seen in a very, very long time. That movie was so good. Oh my God. And Gladys? Are you kidding me? Gladys, honey. That character. I really missed an opportunity. I did not watch it before. Well, no, I did watch it before Halloween. See, this was a little bit ago. This was a minute ago. Okay. I just did not share it with you guys. I really enjoyed it, but I did not have the time to get a Gladys costume. Otherwise, I would have completely rocked the Gladys. Okay. I would have walked around with my stick and just snapped it, maybe had a backup stick in my pocket. But that movie was really, really amazing. I was not expecting to love it that much. And now I'm like, when you see something you really, really enjoy and then you're like searching for that same feeling again, I'm like, I need another movie that makes me feel that way. And I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. But if you haven't, what are you doing with your life? Go watch Weapons. Don't be late to the game like I was. This is really late to the game. But yeah, really good movie. Aside from that, really nothing crazy happening in my life other than just my actual life. My actual life is insane. Insane in the membrane. It's November. November is Novembering, but not in the way that I want it to November. It's just really, really busy. So my oldest is in flag football. She has all the games, all the time and practices. And then we have so many things for just school, right? Because I'm a teacher. Hi, if you're new here, if this is your first time joining, I'm also a teacher. And November, I swear to God, is just the busiest freaking month other than May and August. I don't know what we did to ourselves this year, but we got in quite a pickle. We got in quite a pickle, you guys. We had book reports due, balloons over Broadway due, which is like a cute little thing where the kids create their own like float or balloon, kind of like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And so we had that due. We also had our field trip this month. My daughter had multiple away games and home games and just all the things. My little one started yoga club and it's been a lot on our plates on top of, Thanksgiving and just surviving, just being alive, and regular work duties and mom duties. Like it's many, many things all at once. So November has been very busy and I cannot wait for a little break because I might cry. You guys I might crash out next episode. Just stay tuned. You never know. Could happen. It's happened before. Anyways, okay. So lots of wonderful things happening in my life. I don't mean to sound ungrateful. No, I'm very, very thankful for all the wonderful stuff. I'm thankful to be busy. I'm thankful that I have this podcast. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful that my kids are going to be well rounded individuals and they have extracurriculars that they're doing. I'm thankful for my job. All of it's really, really wonderful. It's just busy. So I don't mean to sound ungrateful. It's just been a crazy month, wild and crazy. So that's all I have for you. What's even wilder and crazier is this case that we have today. This case, I was shocked. I've never heard of this case before, and it's really sad. Just going to warn you guys right at the top. This is a hard one because the victim is a child. Okay, Jessica Gutierrez was a 4-year-old girl. So just letting you know right away, right out the gate, that is the victim that we're going to be talking about today. But I'd never heard of this before, so I'm shocked. This is a really interesting and very very tragic case that I'm a little confused. I don't know why bigger podcasts I guess haven't covered this. Maybe they don't know about it. Maybe there's something to it that's controversial that I don't know about, and that's why people aren't touching it. I don't know. We'll see, I guess. We'll find out. But on one hand, I'm like, cool, fresh material for my listeners, right? Many of you probably haven't heard of this. On the other hand, I'm like, suspicious. Why? Why have other pods not covered this case? So let's get into it. Today, we are diving into the heartbreaking case of a little girl who vanished right out of her bedroom in the middle of the night. Her sister, who had been sleeping beside her, she later said something that sounded almost unreal, that a man wearing what she called a quote, wizard hat, took her. And for 35 years, nothing was solved. This is the story of the disappearance of Jessica Gutierrez. Jessica was born on December 3rd, 1981, in South Carolina. So she was a little Sagittarius baby and probably fiery like the rest of them. She was the youngest of 4 kids. She had 2 sisters and a brother. Not long after she was born, her parents divorced, and her mom, Debbie, ended up raising all 4 children by herself. It was hard. They lived in a small town called Edmond, just outside of the state capital. And Debbie, she did struggle financially without support from Jessica's dad, but she did everything she possibly could to keep her kids close and to make it feel normal. When she had to work, the older kids typically watched the younger kids, including Jessica. And when the mother had free time, she made sure to try and find little things that they could all do together. She was very, very big on family time. Everyone in this family got along really well. The kids were very close, and they were very close with their mother too. They just seemed like a very tight knit, loving family. They had their little struggles like any family, but overall, the siblings seemed pretty close. On June 5th, 1986, everything was normal. It was a typical summer day. Jessica, who was 4 at the time, was playing outside with her siblings while Debbie got things done around the house. That evening, they had dinner like usual, and then everyone went to bed. Jessica normally slept with her mom because she was the youngest, but her brother had not been feeling good that day, and he had had an earache all evening. So Debbie was like, here, your brother's going to sleep in my bed tonight, and you're going to go sleep with your sisters because, brother's not feeling well, which is so sweet and also super normal. Like my youngest always sneaks in our bed. And if she's not feeling good, she's definitely sleeping in our bed. Like that's just always been the thing. We did that with our oldest too. So, because of that, Jessica went to sleep with her 2 sisters in their room, one of them being her 6-year-old sister, Rebecca. The next morning, Debbie woke up around 9 o'clock, and Rebecca came into her room and asked if she could make cereal for breakfast. But the moment Debbie stepped out of her bedroom, she knew something was not right. The front door, which was always locked before bed, was standing open, and their dog, who normally stayed outside, was running loose inside the house. So Debbie was like, okay, what's going on? Did someone come into the house? Did one of the kids go out? Like, what's going on here? Then Debbie noticed that out back, the curtain rod was laying on the ground under the window and that the screen had been completely taken off. So Debbie rushes into the girls' room, but Jessica was not there. When she asked her older daughters if they knew where their sister was, Rebecca calmly said, quote, "She's gone. A man with a beard and a magic hat took her." End quote. And at first, Debbie was kind of taken aback. She was like, "What? Rebecca, like, are you making up a story right now? Where is your sister?" And I mean, she was 6 after all. So her making up a story could have been plausible. So Debbie was like, okay, no, there's no wizard that took my child. So Debbie figured Jessica had maybe just slipped out into the yard. Sometimes she did that. She would wake up and go play outside. But when Debbie went to check, she wasn't outside. Debbie searched the entire house, calling her name, hoping that maybe she was hiding. She was like, maybe she's being sneaky. She's trying to be funny. She's playing a trick on me. She's like, "Jessica, this is not funny. Come out. Mommy's looking for you." But after searching and searching and searching, Jessica was nowhere to be found. Debbie ran back into the girls' room, demanding that Rebecca tell her where Jessica had gone. She was like, "Rebecca, I know you know something. Where is your sister? Like, she was just asleep in here with you. Where did she go?" And Rebecca kept repeating the same thing. Again, she said, "The man with the magic hat took her." So Debbie began to panic and she started yelling, asking why Rebecca didn't scream or wake her up. She was like, "Rebecca, was someone in your room? Was there a person in your room? Why didn't you scream?" And finally, Rebecca told her mother the rest. She said she had woken up during the night and she saw a man with a beard wearing a hat that she thought looked like a wizard hat, and he was standing next to her bed. She said that he gently picked up Jessica while she was sleeping and just walked out of the room. Rebecca, when she witnessed this, was obviously confused and terrified, and she hid under the blanket and convinced herself that it was just a weird dream. Clearly, she's scared. So, of course, she's going to try and rationalize this in her little 6-year-old brain, like, "I'm just dreaming. This is a nightmare." And eventually, she did fall back asleep. And in the morning, when Rebecca woke up, she didn't really realize what she had seen and what had happened. Again, she's only 6. So she told all of this to Debbie. And as soon as Debbie understood that this might be real, she called the police immediately. Officers promptly responded to her call, and they searched the house and quickly agreed that Jessica had probably been abducted. It looked like someone had come in through the living room window by removing the screen. Remember, when Debbie went out to look for Jessica, she saw that the screen had been removed. Investigators also found a clear fingerprint on the outside of the glass, which they photographed, and they also found a pack of cigarettes and a few cigarette butts on the ground near the window. Because they suspected a kidnapping, they set up a tape recorder on Debbie's phone in case the abductor called with a ransom demand, because that's pretty common. With kidnappings, typically there comes a ransom. The police decided to interview Rebecca, the 6-year-old sister, and she again told the same story, adding this time that the man had unplugged their fan and their nightlight before picking Jessica up. Now, because he had done this, she did not see his face clearly in the dark, just that he was wearing a tall hat that to her looked like a wizard hat and that he had a beard. The police also questioned Debbie and asked her to go over every little detail about the day before. During that conversation, Debbie mentioned someone that she did slightly suspect. There was a man that she had recently broken up with, and according to her, he drank a lot and he was pretty controlling and sometimes very aggressive. He hadn't taken the breakup very well at all, so she wondered if maybe he took Jessica to get back at her, which is a terrifying thought. if you're dating somebody and the breakup doesn't go well, and then this is going on with your children, and your very first thought is, oh my gosh, he took my baby. What a piece of shit. I'm sorry. Wow. Thank God you're out of that relationship. I'm glad she got out of that when she did, because if that was her first thought, what an asshole. So Debbie, desperate for answers, she called this guy up. She called him from the station and he denied everything. He was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I did not take your daughter. I really hated our breakup, but like that was not me. So the police did look into him, but they could not connect him to the disappearance at all. They were like, I don't think this is our guy. They also checked Jessica's father, but he lived really far out of state, so he couldn't have done it. There was just no way. He wasn't anywhere near South Carolina at the time. Meanwhile, the fingerprint that they found near that window was run through the FBI database, and no matches came up. There was nothing. So the police had no choice but to start searching the area around the house. Jessica's home sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by miles of open fields. Officers searched abandoned buildings, woods, streams, rivers, anywhere a child could possibly be. They were like, if she did run off, is she out here somewhere? And if somebody took her, where are they hiding out here? Because this would be a great hiding space. There's so much land. Now, due to the severity of this case and having absolutely no leads at all, the FBI joined the search the next day. But even they couldn't help. There was nothing that they could find. Flyers were distributed all across South Carolina. The sheriff even sent an airplane to survey the fields from above. And Debbie, having 4 kids to take care of, she was really concerned about their safety and leaving them alone or even bringing them out on searches. So she stayed home with her kids and did not join this search party at the time. She felt really helpless and she wanted to stay home in case, she got a ransom call, anything like that. She was just beside herself and the police rarely contacted her proactively. So she had to reach out to them for everything. 2 days after Jessica disappeared, Debbie called the sheriff to ask if the search would continue over the weekend. She was desperate, she was emotional, and the call quickly turned very tense. Debbie, after again hearing that there was really no movement in the case, they had no leads and they didn't really know where to start, she accused the sheriff of not caring enough. And this man snapped back at her. He insisted that he had been searching all night and even told her that if she kept accusing him, he'd pull his team and they'd, quote, forget about the case. If any person who is supposed to be in charge of searching for a missing person, especially for a child, a 4-year-old, is ever like, do it again and I'm going to forget about your child, excuse the fuck out of me? What? What did you just say? That is diabolical. That is heartless. That is soulless to say that to a grieving mother. Is that a joke? Ugh. So luckily, Debbie's phone was still recording everything. Remember when they put that little recording device on her phone in case you got a ransom call? Well, it recorded that whole conversation. So she now had that in her pocket in case she needed to use it. As the days dragged into weeks, Debbie felt more and more like the police were just not doing enough. Months went by with no progress, and we all know they call it the first 48 for a reason, right? The longer it goes on, unfortunately, and I'm not saying in all cases, because that doesn't always happen, but the longer it goes on, the less likely you are to find the child alive and well. So Debbie is understandably a wreck. She is a wreck until a twist in the story came out of nowhere. 10 weeks, you guys, 10 weeks after Jessica went missing, police dealt with a string of crimes committed by one man. First, he broke into a home. Does that sound familiar? He broke into a home, but then he ran when the owner confronted him with a weapon. Then this man stole a van and drove to North Carolina, where he broke into another home and assaulted a sleeping woman. Breaking into home, pattern, sleeping woman, pattern. Now, yes, this is a woman, not a child, but it's a pattern. And when you got nothing, you got to go on something. So when I first read this, I said, oh, we got our guy. Immediately, I was like, this sounds promising, right? Sounds promising. So this man, he was arrested not long after, and when his fingerprints were added to the system, investigators finally got a match. The fingerprint on Jessica's window belonged to him. His name was Thomas McDowell, a 27-year-old local man. 27. His frontal lobe just barely developed. And you can tell that it's just freshly developed because, sir, if you're going to commit a crime, maybe don't leave your fingerprints all over the place, right? You know when detectives say the perpetrator left clues? Yeah, McDowell left them a freaking neon sign, his whole ass fingerprint. This is the kind of guy who would think like wearing a hat makes him unrecognizable. Like, congratulations, discount wizard. Good job. You shall not pass a background check. This guy, 27, 27, fucking idiot. So, I mean, I'm glad he's an idiot, obviously. So when Debbie heard this name, that is when a light bulb went off in her head. She was like, oh my God, I know him. And she immediately told the police, I recognize that man. I know that name. A few months before Jessica disappeared, she had hired Thomas McDowell through relatives. Her relatives had known him and introduced them, and she hired him to do work around her property. And over the course of about 2 days, he built a shed for her and repaired the porch awning. Debbie remembered something else too. Thomas had a beard, and he always wore a tall cowboy hat. And in the dark, a frightened 6-year-old might easily mistake that for a wizard hat like in the cartoons. But even with the fingerprint match, police claimed it wasn't enough to charge him. They said, we're so sorry. We're idiots. And they didn't charge him. They argued that because Jessica's body hadn't been found and they technically couldn't prove that anything had happened to her, just that she had been abducted, that they couldn't charge him with anything. They also floated around the idea that the fingerprint might have been left months earlier while Thomas worked there, even though that didn't make much sense. Forensic experts noted that the fingerprint looked very fresh. It did not show any signs of weather exposure, and Debbie said that she cleaned that window constantly because her kids were always leaning on it from outside while playing. If Thomas had touched the window 6 months earlier, it absolutely would have been wiped away by then. But still, the police refused to charge him. They did not even bring this man in for questioning, you guys. I don't even know. At least talk to the guy. Like, at least question him. So, in 1987, Thomas was convicted for the assault that he committed in North Carolina, and he was sentenced to 10 years. Now, Debbie was understandably very, very frustrated. She was also devastated that he still wasn't being held accountable for Jessica's abduction, and she still didn't know where her baby was or if she was even alive. And then another little twist happened. Later that same year, Thomas's cellmate contacted the police and said that Thomas had confessed to him that he committed a crime in South Carolina. According to the cellmate, Thomas admitted that he kidnapped a little girl from her bedroom to assault her. Thomas said that the girl bit him while he was attacking her, and in a fit of rage, he killed her. He then went on to say that he dismembered her body and took the remains into a field and left them there. So finally, investigators were like, I think maybe we should question him. And they did. It took his cellmate calling and saying, hey, this guy just told me an insane fucking story. He is out of his damn mind, for the investigators to actually question him. Don't believe the mom. Got a fingerprint at the crime scene, and the mom says she knows this guy, and then he commits an assault. Don't question him then. So the investigators questioned Thomas in prison, and guess what? He didn't even try to deny it, but rather, he said he would only confess officially if they granted him full immunity. And obviously, they weren't going to do that. So once again, nothing moved forward. Nothing. They didn't try to make another deal with him. They didn't try to convince him otherwise. They didn't say, hey, talk to your attorney. Let's work this out. Maybe we can think of something else. I'm sure there's another way that we can bring justice to this situation without granting you immunity. Nope, they didn't even fucking try. So the cellmate, this guy, now I don't know what this cellmate was in for, but I'm kind of a fangirl for him right now. This cellmate later wrote a letter directly to Debbie, telling her the entire story. And she was horrified that Thomas was getting away with it. Now, I know. You guys are probably like, Taylor, those cellmates sometimes they just say stuff to get, trying to get a lesser sentence. I really, really don't think that was the case here. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really a fangirl for this cellmate. I don't know what that guy was in for. He could be a terrible, terrible person. Maybe he was trying to get a lesser sentence. I don't know, but he did help Debbie. So now Debbie, after receiving this letter, became so frustrated that she started doing her own investigating. She was like, why is a cellmate writing to me telling me all of this information and the police aren't doing anything? They question him and then they're just like, well, he wants immunity, so guess we're moving on. She got so mad and she was like, no, I'm taking matters into my own hands, which big mama bear energy. I love that because who wouldn't? That's your child. You would literally do anything. So at one point, she found an abandoned car that used to belong to who? To Thomas McDowell. And inside of that car, she found threads and fibers matching the color of Jessica's pajamas from the night she disappeared. But do you know what the police did when she brought it to their attention? They shrugged it off. They said it didn't seem credible that Debbie, without proper tools or training, could find something like that. And do you know what I said when I read that? I said, oh, go get so fucked, dude. That's what I said. I was like, excuse me? This mother has been asking you for months to dig into this further. And you said no. Then you find out that he might actually be guilty of this. He asks for immunity and you go, no again, moving on. What do you think the mother's going to do? This mother's going to do whatever it fucking takes to find her baby. If that means finding an abandoned car that belonged to Thomas McDowell and searching for any sort of evidence that her baby was in that car, you bet your ass that she's going to do that because who wouldn't for their child? I'm just like the audacity of these investigators in this situation just really, really frustrates me. They're like, how could a woman find that information on her own? Maybe because she gives a fuck, you guys. I don't know. Ugh. Now, after this, after they were like, hey, I don't think that's credible, in 1987, another lead popped up. Kansas police found a girl who matched Jessica's description. And Debbie was like, okay, I need to know. I need to know if this is my baby. How did she get to Kansas? I don't even care. Let's fly there. Let's figure it out. So Debbie flew there immediately. And the minute she heard the little girl's voice, she knew that that was not her daughter. She was like, oh, just crushing devastation. She was just really hoping for some kind of breakthrough moment, to find her baby. But the minute she heard that little girl's voice, she was like, "Oh, I don't even have to see her. That's not my girl." And she did. She ended up seeing the little girl and she confirmed that that was not Jessica. So that was 1987 when all of that was happening. Debbie trying to find information on her own. Thomas sort of admitting that he was there. He didn't deny it. And he said he'd only confess if he was granted full immunity, which in my book means he's guilty, right? Dude, what do you need immunity for if you're not fucking guilty? If you're not implicating yourself of anything, then you shouldn't need the immunity, right? If you're innocent. So in my brain, the way my brain works, I think only a guilty person would say that. But that's just me. So all of this was going on. And then years passed. Years. In 1990, Jessica's case was featured on a popular TV show about unsolved crimes. And it brought a lot of new tips and attention to the case, but none panned out. It was still just nothing, no movement. And in 1991, an aged progressed portrait of Jessica was created. This was the first ever done age progression for a missing child in South Carolina. So this was a pretty big deal. And at that time, the technology was still very new and experimental, and unfortunately, nothing came of it. So this case stayed cold for decades, you guys, decades. In 2007, 21 years after Jessica disappeared, Debbie publicly criticized the police again. She was like, "I've just had it." She's like, "I know by now that obviously things are not good. Like there's no good answer that would likely come of this situation, but I need closure." So this time, she gave reporters that recording of the sheriff saying that he would call off the search and forget the case if she kept bugging him about it. Reporters confronted him, but then he claimed he never gave up, and he said that he even assigned more officers after that conversation. Debbie said that she had tried for years to get outside agencies to take over this case, but every single time the local prosecutor blocked it. And in 2007, the case was reviewed again by officials, but they said they still didn't have enough evidence to charge anyone. So Debbie is again feeling absolutely crushed. But as luck would have it, years down the line, in 2021, 35 years after Jessica vanished, the new sheriff, Jay Kuhn, reopened the case with the FBI's help. 50 agents took part in reviewing everything. As they re examined the evidence, they discovered even more supporting clues pointing to Thomas McDowell. Friends and relatives had told investigators that Thomas had dramatically changed his appearance right after Jessica disappeared. He shaved his beard off, he cut his long hair, and he stopped wearing his cowboy hat. They also said that he smoked the exact same brand of cigarettes found near the window at Jessica's house. Unfortunately, forensic experts couldn't recover any DNA from the cigarettes after all these years because too many tests had been done on them previously, which likely erased any biological material. But even without the DNA, the combination of evidence, the fingerprint, the witness testimony from his old cellmate, his suspicious behavior, and his abrupt change in appearance became too strong to ignore. So detectives finally believed they had enough to charge him. In January of 2022, Thomas was arrested at age 62. 62. He was 27 when all of this happened. My God. And when they arrested him, he refused to admit guilt. He was like, "Wasn't me. I don't know." The trial took years to prepare and didn't begin until January of 2024. His defense argued that the fingerprint was simply, left behind when he worked on the house months before. They also tried to use Rebecca's childhood account, claiming that a wizard hat and a cowboy hat are too different for a child to confuse, which I would argue depends on the type of fucking cowboy hat, right? Some of them things are really tall. There are some that are really nice, and then there are some that they're too much. And my guess, based on what I know about McDowell, is it was probably too much. McDowell wasn't exactly what you'd call a subtle man. I mean, if you're leaving fingerprints on bedroom windows like your autograph, just go ahead and leave your social security number too. He had the investigative foresight of a soggy napkin. He didn't get away with this for this long because he was some sort of criminal mastermind. He got away with it because the investigation was sloppy. The only thing he successfully hid for 36 years was his common sense. My God. So they're trying to argue about the hat and all the stupid stuff. They're like, no, there's no way a child would say that. 6-year-olds will literally look at you and be like, you look like my grandma and you're 32. Like, yes, a 6-year-old will think that a cowboy hat looks like a wizard's hat if it is dark and they're sleepy. And then, they're arguing about the fingerprint. They're like, oh, he worked on the house. So obviously, guys, they had already said there was no way that that fingerprint could have been from when he worked on the house. The prosecution brought in experts who confirmed that the fingerprint was fresh. They also brought in another former inmate who testified that Thomas had confessed back in 1987. Now, remember, he was arrested in North Carolina for those crimes, so he was serving time in North Carolina. So prosecutors emphasized that an inmate in another state would not know such specific details unless Thomas had already told him. So after all of this, after both sides presented their cases and the prosecution kept coming at them, with the confirmed fingerprint and how it was fresh, plus the inmate who testified that Thomas had confessed, they finally got him. They finally convicted this guy. A judge with some common sense finally saw the light. And on February 8th, 2024, the jury unanimously found Thomas McDowell guilty. At 63 years old, he was sentenced to life in prison. Thank God he was sentenced to life in prison. But he's 63 and he did this at 27. If the police would have just done their fucking job back in 1986 when Jessica went missing, this guy could have been put behind bars and maybe spent his life there, his actual life. And for Debbie, who had believed in his guilt since the very beginning, the verdict was for her very bittersweet because she was relieved that he was finally held accountable, but she couldn't help thinking about the fact that he could have been arrested decades earlier. And instead, he just lived freely for most of his life. The sheriff, Jay Kuhn, who had helped Debbie finally get this guy convicted, also said, quote, after far too long, we finally have justice for Jessica Gutierrez and her family. While we can't bring Jessica back, the person responsible for her murder will be held accountable and spend the rest of his life behind bars. And you'll notice that he mentioned her murder because remember, when McDowell confessed to his cellmate, he said that he dismembered her and that he left her in a field somewhere. And then, if you remember from the beginning of the story, they lived in kind of a remote rural area with just miles upon miles upon miles of fields behind their home. So, the hardest part for her mother, for Debbie, is that Jessica's remains have never been found. Even after nearly 40 years, Debbie, with help from the new sheriff, she refuses to give up the search. She understands that the chances of finding her daughter are painfully small. It's not impossible. And, it's happened before. Years down the line, people's remains have been found. And I hope that one day they do find her remains and that Jessica gets the proper services and the proper burial that she deserves. And that is the story of the disappearance and murder of Jessica Gutierrez. This story broke my heart. Like it shattered me. Being a mother myself and any moms listening, any dads listening, any parents at all, you know that instant panic when you can't find your child for like even a split second. Maybe you're at the store and they're not next to you anymore. They're like hiding behind a clothing rack or something 'cause they love to give us heart attacks. Or when they're at the playground and you're keeping an eye on them and you look away for just a moment and then you look back and you're searching, you're searching, you're searching. You're like, where are they? That feeling. But she had it for 35 years. And it's the same with, the Aisha degree case. All of these cases of these children that go missing and then the police don't do their fucking job. I mean, well, in Aisha degree's case, they did their very best. I have my opinions about that case, but it's so frustrating. What happened to these babies? It's just devastating. So that is the story that I have for you guys today. It's kind of a heavy one. Anytime that there are child victims, I almost hesitate to do this story, but then I'm like, no, because people need to hear it. People need to know that this is a reality, and it's just also just very important to get these stories out there. Everyone's story deserves to be told. It's so sad. There are so many stories like this, you guys, an insane amount. I mean, I was looking to originally do like a local story first, but it's really fresh. I decided I was going to give it some time because sometimes when you jump into those fresh cases a little too early, there's a lot of emotion still very much involved. Not that there isn't any emotion further down the line, there still is, but it's been able to be processed a little bit further. So I decided to wait. But this is a problem in our society that really needs to be looked at closely. We need to understand the psychology of why people abduct children. Like, why? What is wrong with you? Why are you taking someone's child? And then why the police don't always take these cases seriously. I need to know what kind of human looks at a missing child and their grieving mother and says, if you come at me again, I'm going to forget the case. What kind of fuckery is that? That I will never forget that from this case. I can't get over that part of the story. That like infuriated me. Oh, yeah. Do not mess with parents and their kids. Mama bear, papa bear, don't mess with them. Don't mess with grandparents and their babies. Like, we mean business and we stand on business and we will do whatever it takes for our children. And I think this story is a great testament to that because this mother never gave up hope and she never will. She wants to find her child. And I really hope that one day she does. Well, you guys, I'm so sorry that you had to sit through that with me, but you chose to be here. So that's your own fault. You're welcome then, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to say I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed my roasting of McDowell. Okay. The crusty Walmart Dumbledore. Oh, and of course, if you guys have any other cases that you want me to cover, send them my way. I did have someone on TikTok message me about Polly Class, and she mentioned that she actually knew her. And I would just like to say to that listener, if you are listening right now, I would love to cover Polly Class. I do feel like she's very high profile. MFM covered her as well because Karen Kilgariff is from Petaluma. So I know that it's kind of like a highly saturated case. But I mean, I would love to cover her. That is the hard part about having a podcast like this is because the true crime world, it's very, very niche. And I mean, you bring up a story to me and I'm like, yep, I've heard of it. That's why when I found this one for today, I was like, I got to do it because I've never heard of this and it's horrific. It's terrible. It's so sad. And more people should have been talking about it. So if you did know this case, I'm very, very happy that you did. I hope that I taught you a little bit more about it. I hope that maybe you learned something more. If you didn't know this case, you're welcome, I guess. We all learned something today. But yeah, you guys can send me whatever cases you would like me to cover. And then, of course, if you have your own stories to tell, like a hometown crime, a paranormal story, an experience of yours, something just absolutely bizarre and wild that you would love to tell me about, send it in. It really doesn't even have to have a theme. Just send it in if you want it to be read on Booze Clues, which is going to be next week. Oh, shit. It's already going to be next week. It's going to be the end of the month. Holy crap. Uh, okay. Well, I guess I should get started on picking those. Whoops. Told you, it's been a busy month. It's been wild. So I guess I should do that. And then send in any other stories you guys have. Okay? Okay. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Go get some merch from the website. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, wherever you follow things. And you can also send in your stories to the Gmail, suspectsandspiritspod@gmail.com. So that's all, folks. That's all I got for you. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening and an incredible Thanksgiving. I hope you guys all have a safe and lovely holiday and get to enjoy some delicious food. I'm probably baking pies right now as we speak, as you're listening to this. So, yeah, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Stay safe, be responsible. And as always, remember to trust your lizard brain. Until next time, goodbye.